Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Robocop Rogue City on the ROG Ally. So let's get started with plugged into the wall. So when you're plugged into the wall, I set the TDP to 30 watts, so 1080p TSR at 67%, which is the equivalent of using quality XeSS or quality FSR when it comes to resolution. You can also use FSR3, XeSS, or nothing. In this case, TSR, in my opinion, looks better, and it performs a little bit better than XeSS. XeSS is a little more soft in motion, but I think TSR is the best of both worlds. If you don't like that, use FSR3. Settings. So since we're plugged into the wall and we have 30 watts of TDP, we're using a mix between medium and low. Unfortunately, shadows and effects have to stay on low, which gives us pretty low shadow draw distance and resolution. But in areas with multiple light sources, you're going to be below 30 if you don't do this. So keep that in mind. So 1080p, quality TSR. And again, this is a demanding part of the game. We're at 30 watts manually. And our target is 30 FPS. As you could see, I chose lumen reflections instead of SSR because I got a very small performance improvement jumping from lumen to SSR. So from lumen to screen space reflections, at least with this resolution, I didn't notice a huge difference. Please, I'm going to die. So you can disable them if you want to, but you lose lots of reflections. But as you can see, the shadow quality is pretty poor on low. So I wouldn't do 1080p necessarily in this game, at least not in these areas. Just due to the fact that we gotta greatly sacrifice the shadows, and we're playing on a handheld console. So 1080p, in my opinion, is overkill. So let's go to 900p. Don't use turbo mode 30 watts because you'll get basically 95 degrees Celsius. So 900p, manually selected 30 watts on all the sliders. Again, the turbo mode that is offered automatically by the ROG Ally, while it gives us sometimes 40 something watts, it basically cooks the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally. So keep it at 30 watts when plugged into the wall. Okay, so 900p, same settings, but now instead of shadows on low, we put those and the effects on medium. So basically medium settings, lumen or SSR, up to you. I didn't see much of a performance difference personally, even on bigger places. So 900p, quality TSR, apply, 30 watts, again. And we now have way better performance when it comes to higher shadow quality. Shadows are higher resolution, and the distance of the shadows is improved quite significantly. So if shadows were on low in here, we wouldn't see that light. As an example, there wouldn't be any light in here whatsoever. So this will protect you basically when from drops below 30. And the game still looks amazing. And sorry about the screen tearing, that's because I'm on a capture card. On the smaller screen you won't have any tearing, even being below the VRR window. So don't worry about that, it's a me thing, it's not you, it's me. Basically. So that's my advice, play like this if you want the best quality possible. But this game also features FSR3 frame generation, so while I don't like the look of FSR3 on this one, I think it's a good option to have. So before doing that, let's do 720p. 720p I think for the smaller screen is still fine, but you get a bit pixelated. The UI is a bit pixelated. Some people can get away with it. Some others don't really like how it looks. I'm one of those people that actually likes 720p on the Ally screen. I don't think it's a big deal. So if we keep the same settings at 720p, even with the upscaler, still looks pretty good. And you are into the 40s, upper 40s actually. So apart from being the upper 40s, if you stay on native res, you should still be fine. So native 720 is possible if you wanted to, but you need to be plugged into the wall for 30 watts. We're going to drop to 20 watts for portable play, because this would be less than an hour battery if we played this outside the charger. But before doing that, let's do frame generation and see how far we can push it. So for frame gen, the base frame rate that I usually recommend is at least 45 FPS, 50 FPS. So let's do balanced FSR3, see what frame rate we get at 720p. Okay, 50s, and if we shoot, we drop into the mid 40s. Okay, I think this is good enough. So we keep it like this, maybe lower shadows to low. Yeah, that's maybe a good idea. And instead of lumen, we use SSR. And apart from all that, we enable frame generation, which requires a restart of the game, which is perfect. So we apply this. And let's now restart the game, shall we? Welcome back, 720p balanced FSR3 with frame generation from the game enabled. As you can see, we're getting like 100 FPS, so instead of the 50s, we're into the hundreds. Feels pretty smooth, although with the drops in performance when effects show up, since it's a very sudden drop, there's sometimes... yeah, it sometimes feels unstable, but actually as a guy that doesn't usually play with frame generation because I don't like how it feels, this actually feels pretty good. So maybe consider actually performance FSR and low shadows. Yeah, let's do low shadows. Doesn't look great with low shadows, but hey, what can you do? Okay, that's better. Instead of the mid 80s, we're in the 90s. Alright. So you can actually be above 60, although, well, as you can see with low shadows, the draw distance of the shadows is super poor. But this is what we sacrifice for 60 FPS. So you can actually do it in a pixelated manner. In the smaller screen, shouldn't be a big deal. But for this that I'm showing you, you need to be plugged into the wall. Because we're doing 30 watts. Which, if you're not plugged into the wall, expect less than an hour of battery. Or an hour in the best case scenario. So let's now jump into portable play so you can see how it looks in the smaller screen. Welcome back, now in handheld. We start with 1080p, again 20 watts, because we want the battery to at least last, I don't know, an hour and 20 minutes maybe? So TSR at 50%. Again, I think this is the equivalent of performance FSR when it comes to upscalers. Again, a small screen. What we want here is a good UI, the UI to be as sharp as possible, while the image quality is okay, because it's 1080p. I mean, come on, it's still a lot of pixels for a small screen. Everything on medium except in shadows, which are on low. You'll see why in a second. And yep. What's the draw of the battery? Basically 30 watts in total. Probably a little bit more when S hits the F, to say it in some way. But the game looks great on the smaller screen. I mean, despite being 50% resolution, with TSR, it does a great job. It's too bad that, again, we need to lower the shadows in order to get this result. But this is, again, lower wattage. We're 10 watts below when we were plugged in. That's why it drops a bit further. But again, I'm in a place with multiple light sources, with a good amount of enemies, effects on screen. So this would be kind of as bad as it gets, to say it in some way. That's why I'm here, not just walking on the streets of Detroit. Try again. So again, I still think this is overkill when it comes to resolution. 1080p I think is too much for a smaller screen. The UI looks super sharp though, that's a big plus if you're interested in that. But I think 900p is best of both worlds scenario. So we're going to stay with TSR at 65% for 900p. Actually, let's put it at 60%. And the shadows on medium. Let me see if I can push it a little bit further. So 900p, TSR 60%, medium settings. And we're using SSR instead of Lumen for a few extra frames. And personally, this is probably the way I would play the game. I'm still not sure about shadow quality on medium. But it's one way to do it, so that's good. And I think this is, again, the best balance. You still have a good resolution for the UI elements, which are a little bit tiny. You get medium settings, so decent draw distance of objects, shadows, effects, all that good stuff. And on the smaller screen, despite being like 60% resolution, it actually does a great job. I mean, it's a 7-inch screen. Does a great job maintaining good image quality. And you get, since we're at 20 watts on the APU, over an hour of battery, but not much more than an hour. Maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So yeah. This would be, again, in my opinion, the best settings, best balance of visuals, performance, and all that. And if you're one of the OG people that do not care about the UI being sharp, well, we can resort to 720p. So let's do that. At 720p, you can actually stay at 80% resolution. There we go. And the same settings. So 720p medium settings with 80% resolution. This is probably, actually, let me try native. Yeah, native is too much. 80% resolution, 720p with TSR, medium settings, so the game looks pretty good. And the UI looks worse, and the image quality is not that different, honestly. If you actually want to do 720p, you can actually increase the settings a little bit, I would say. So yeah, 720p, I don't know, feels kind of a waste in my opinion. 900p, at least for portable play, looks to be the best of both worlds, which in my opinion is wonderful. So to finalize this video, let me show you frame generation with FSR3. Personally, I do not like how FSR3 looks in this game whatsoever. So we're going to have to resort to FSR3 performance, shadows on low, effects on low, reflections, yeah, everything on low basically. So we're sacrificing visuals, especially when it comes to draw distance of shadows. So now on FSR3 performance at 720p, we are into the 50s. That's pretty cool. But we had to sacrifice the settings quite significantly. Which is okay, we're in a portable machine. So this should keep you kind of in the VRR window. Sometimes probably going to drop below that. But let's do frame generation. So to do that, if you don't want frame gen, just keep it like this, 50% 720p, although I think it's a little bit too low of a resolution. On the smaller screen it's passable. So you enable frame generation, and let's restart the game. So 1 sec. We restarted the game, and hold up. And we have frame generation at 720p, low settings, performance, FSR. So we're at half 720p, low settings with frame generation. And this, man, it feels smooth. Although when we get into fights, it's kind of hard to aim because it drops in an out of the blue way, to say it in some way. Because once effects show up, enemies start attacking you. The performance hit is pretty large. So you drop from generated 100 FPS to generated 80 FPS. So yeah, it doesn't feel great. Although looks smooth, but controls don't feel amazing. Although it does feel better than playing at 30 FPS, which is not saying much really. But I feel a little bit of input lag. So if you don't care about visuals, you want to play on low, at 50% 720p with performance FSR, and on top of it the frame generation, you can get closer to the refresh rate of the ROG Ally. And being a smaller screen, maybe it's more passable with this low of a resolution. But it's nice to have the option. Yeah, I mean, here it drops super hard, drops into the 60s. Which probably means that in a real scenario, we're dropping into the 30s. So it doesn't feel great. Yeah. Yeah, frame gen is a great idea. It's still not perfect. Also uses more VRAM. So maybe you want to keep those textures on low actually. Let's put those textures on low. Maybe we are VRAM bound. No. Or do we? No. It just decided to drop. So when you're playing portable, in my opinion, go for 900p, medium settings, TSR, and it looks great. It's a great mix of visuals and and resolution. And the game on the smaller screen looks great, despite the resolution sacrifices. So yeah, there are stress points where the game just drops way too low. Hold B to repair. Oh, you have to hold it, okay. So my conclusion on this, play on 900p, the UI will look sharp, medium settings, so the shadow draw distance is not that terrible. You'll stay from 30 to 40 something, sometimes into the 50s, really depends on the area. But in stress points like this one, when there are heavy firefights, which is what matters, let's be honest here, it's going to drop closer to 30. We need to use upscaling while we're playing a UE5 game. You can even get away with Lumen at 900p, so take that as you will. But if you don't care about any of that and want to be closer to 100 FPS, 720p performance FSR 3, and frame generation, or lower everything at 720p performance FSR, and basically play on the lowest settings. But this is an amazing game in my opinion. Would I recommend it on the ROG Ally? Yes, but at 900p. If you're plugged into the wall and you put it at 30 watts, okay, whatever. But I think it's the best of both worlds, definitely. So those will be my best settings. I'm glad that they updated this game as they did. Lots of new options in the menu. It actually runs better than day one, so props to them for keeping improvements coming. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did revisiting Robocop and now on the ROG Ally. Highly recommended on a portable machine such as this one. On the Steam Deck is much worse obviously because it's slower hardware, but on here I would actually play it from beginning to end. Especially on 900p. It really feels good to play. So thanks for watching and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys.